Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Project 46 podcast week in review. And I'm joined today, we're a little light on the clientele, but I'm joined today by Andrew Spino.
Yeah, even lighter on the talent. With Janelle not here.
With Janelle not here, it may not be worth watching, but we're going to try to hold down the fort.
It's cold and flu season. It's Friday. It's difficult to get people to, there's 1,000 things going on. I missed a couple weeks ago. You missed last week. Totally inexcusable considering how trivial and trite the reason. Which, do you want to tell us about?
Oh, well, I just, my firstborn child, it was born. So other than that, it was a inexcusable reason to miss the podcast, but
clearly you don't take this job seriously.
right.
No, in all sincerity, congratulations.
Thank you.
Beautiful daughter.
Yes, she's
mom is good.
Everything is great.
Healthy.
She's got 10 fingers, 10 toes, all of those
beautiful
things, and I couldn't be more blessed. And I'll tell you, having a child really does just change your whole aspect and look on life.
That sounds cliche.
It is.
But it's a cliche for a reason.
Yes. Yeah. No, it is, because and you don't realize it because you think of it as cliche before you have a kid, before you have your own child. And it just makes, I think, everything that we talk about on this podcast, which is a lot of education, a lot of things like that, all the more important.
Here's what I remember when I became a father at 26. And it pains me to say this, that my firstborn is now 26, the same age I was.
Old.
But I remember at that moment, being in the hospital and kind of established that night, it just occurred, all the questions that I had for the universe, why am I here? Mm-hmm. It felt like they just all went away.
Yeah.
This is why I'm here.
Exactly. And I think it goes to the left wants your children for a reason. And I bring it back to that because
why do we always have to talk politics?
Because when you're talking about the future of the country, you're talking about the future of our society, you're talking about our children, and nothing brings that more into perspective than seeing a little baby there who's completely reliant on you for food, for everything. And
it's exhilarating and it's intimidating.
Yes.
Did you have this? I remember with our first one, by the second and third one. But I remember. So he was born and
no way
in the hospital. That's where the story starts. No, but my wife had a C-section, so she was in the hospital for 2 or 3 days like that. And I remember when they were discharging us, they're like, "Okay, you can go," and we're like, "We can't take this baby out of the hospital." It was like a panic event that we both have. We're like, the world's contaminated. I can't.
I didn't have that as much. I was actually anxious to get her home and just be with her alone.
Well, I had no idea how dangerous hospitals were at the time.
Yeah.
So
I will say this, that the hospital we were at in Norman was very, very good.
Good.
The staff was just really
Norman
great.
Regional or OU?
Yes, Norman Regional,
okay,
and
good.
they were exceptional. Everything went by without a hitch. They took great care of my wife. They took great, and for those who may have followed me, I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of some of the things that Norman Children's Hospital has done in the past, but the care they took of my wife and that baby was just exceptional. They did really good.
That's great.
And we got out in 24 hours and we're at home, and
wow.
And everything has been really, really great. So thank you for your
congratulations. Well, let me just tell you, since you're telling childbirth,
okay,
can I just tell, this story is both kind of amazing, but then it has a sad turn. Okay. My daughter, who just turned 21 this week.
Oh,
sweet
awesome.
Little thing.
Happy birthday.
She was born at Deaconess Hospital, but it was on 50th Street back then, 50. It's still a medical facility, I think, or something. Anyway, so it was that old hospital. Anyway, we had just a exquisite experience. Couldn't say enough nice things. Now, her doctor, or my wife's OBGYN, who was delivering the baby, because she had C-sections with all three, his name was Dr. Curry, and we were scheduled to come in for the C-section on Friday. Now, on Monday, my wife started having kind of cramps or pains, and we've been through enough pregnancies that we thought, do we want to go in there for 12 hours? They're going to strap you to that fetal heart monitor. They're going to say everything's fine, it's indigestion, and send us home. But she said, it was a Monday before the Friday we were scheduled. She said, I just feel like we should go, something, it feels a little off. So, okay, let's go. So stuck the boys with some friends, went there. Dr. Curry comes in, they hook up the heart monitor, and just as casual as can be, he comes in and he says, "You know what? I think this baby wants to come out tonight." So we're going to go ahead and do the surgery now.
Okay.
I'm like, oh, okay. But there was no alarm or anything. It was just kind of,
Right.
Well, it ends up, what he didn't tell us was that her umbilical cord was wrapped around her neck
Oh, no.
twice and her arm.
My goodness.
Okay, now this was 2001 or 2002. I can't believe they let me do this. This would never happen now. But I actually had a camcorder and I recorded the cesarean. Okay, yeah, I've worked in TV news. I have a pretty strong stomach for this stuff.
Right.
But she looked dead. She was blue. I remember they put like oxygen on her and the nurse going, "Come on, honey, come on." I remember they like put some cold water. Oh, there's your baby. Okay, here's my point, is that this doctor came in and he said, if you had not come in, she probably would not have lived. If she had, she would have been permanently brain damaged the rest of her life. He saved her life.
Yeah.
Without question, this doctor saved my daughter's life. Here's the sad part. 2 weeks later, he was killed in a plane crash. He was going flying down to Austin. He was also a pilot, flying to Austin to see his son, overshot the runway and died. So I don't know why I bummed everyone out on a Friday afternoon.
Yeah,
with that story.
that's kind of...
But okay, it was both glorious and sad, but it's a tribute to our medical professionals.
It really
I mean,
is.
this guy was a genuine hero in our family. He saved our daughter's life. And so it's good to remember people like that.
It is, and I
God,
think...
have I derailed or what?
I don't think you have, because I think that a lot about our system, a lot about what we do on podcasts or just in news in general is critique. And I think we should offer praise when praise is due. And you have a lot of excellent medical professionals, like the people at Norman Regional that took such good care of us and my daughter, my wife, that do their job every day and do it very, very well.
About 10 years ago, I was in the hospital with a MRSA staph infection at Mercy. Cannot say enough great things. They were absolutely great.
Modern medicine has really extended the lives of many, many, many people.
Obviously, yeah.
But it also goes into the problems that you may have when doctors or ideological doctors have an agenda.
And that's a good point.
Yeah.
A PhD does not bestow virtue onto the individual.
Neither does an MD.
Yeah, and if you name the sin, I can find you someone with a PhD or an MD or a JD who will tell you that sin is perfectly fine.
Yep.
So it's like any profession. There's good and there's bad. Right?
Yeah. Well, and that gets us into our first story that we want to talk about today. I think it's Oklahoma Republicans target transgender health care.
Can I stop you just for a second, Mark?
Yeah.
Just so, for the thousands of people watching, I want them to know that you and I are actually in the same room.
Yes.
We're sitting
we're in the...
Yeah, we're not in different parts of the country. We're literally sitting across from each other. We just don't have a two-shot setup. So for those of you at home, you'll just have to imagine it.
Yeah.
Miles, there's no need to set up the two-shot.
Yeah, that's okay. Nobody wants to see that side of us.
Good Lord.
But we are in studio, Project 46 Studios today for Week in Review. And there was a story out of Tulsa World. Oklahoma Republicans target transgender health care.
Read that headline again.
Oklahoma
Read it slowly.
Republicans target transgender health care.
Okay.
Yes, and I think that the headline underscores the issue with the article, which I think we can point a lot of the ire here, which is that in an effort, Republicans have undertaken an effort to protect children who are not able to make a decision about what their gender is or what their sex may be, to the point of altering their physical bodies, whether that's with hormones or with surgery, in mandating that they have to be at least age 21 to make that decision. And that's what's come out of the Senate through Nathan Dahm, a good bill there, and through Representative Olson in the House. And this, let me just read portions of this article here. So we'll start here at the beginning. Where several
I'll tell you, Mark, I
Go
don't
ahead.
want to be rude, but while you're doing that, I have to return a text.
Okay.
And I don't want you to think I'm not listening. I am.
Okay.
But I just got something kind of urgent. And I don't want to appear rude. I just want you to know I'm listening, buddy.
That's fine. That's okay.
I
believe you.
listening.
Oklahoma, several Republican lawmakers are seeking to limit gender-affirming care, which right there I think underlies the issue, is that we're talking about gender-affirming care in a child that is below the age of 16, definitely, if not the age of 21, them being able to affirm what they believe in their head over what is actually scientifically or biologically the case in their bodies is the main issue here with Republicans. But let me continue with this. Gender-affirming care for transgender Oklahomans through the slate of bills LGBT advocates say are extreme. You brought this to our attention, or at least this story today, Andrew, and you had a take just on the underlying tone of this article.
Yes.
What is your take on the underlying tone of the article?
Well, there are two elements here. I mean, there's number one, the issue itself about these transgender surgeries for minors. They're saying 21.
Mm-hmm.
This is a tangential issue, but I'm just going to hit on it. Let's decide, please, what an adult is.
Yeah.
You're either an adult at 18 or 21 or 19, who cares? But let's make it universal.
Yeah.
It's absurd that an 18-year-old adult can't drink alcohol. You know why? Because it means you can be tried as an adult for something you're not old enough to do.
Right.
That's inherently absurd. So number one, let's figure that out. But, just like the argument, I'm old enough to go overseas and serve my country. I should be old enough to come back and have a beer. If I'm old enough to cut off my genitalia, I should be able to have a beer as well, too.
Right, or just have the right to vote, maybe?
I might even need one. Be that as it be. What struck me about that article was really the journalistic content more than the political content, obviously, but it was just the way the narrative is written. And this particular reporter, and I don't want to name names, but her initials are Carmen Foreman. She just went from the Oklahoman to the Tulsa World, and based on my experience, anecdotal experience, I find her to be an activist posing as a journalist.
Right.
Now, we have some great journalists at the Capitol. We really do. We have sincere, hardworking, investigative journalists who work at the state Capitol press corps.
Mm-hmm.
She's not one of them.
Okay.
And the way this is written, and I mean, we don't want to bore everyone with the whole
I'll read
article,
a portion of it here.
But I think what's interesting is the narrative is built around the woeful suffering that these children will feel at the hands of these cruel Republicans, when there is absolutely no counter narrative
right.
as to why it is not good for minor children to cut off their genitals.
Right. You're right, and I think, and I'll read this portion here, and I'll speak to it a little bit, but it says the number and severity, this is from Carmen Foreman, the number and severity of transgender bills proposed this year is alarming. And she's quoting Nicole McAfee, Executive Director of Freedom Oklahoma, which advocates on behalf of LGBTQ Oklahomans. And throughout the course of this article, she does not present clearly the underlying issue of these are children we're talking about here. If we're going to say it's 21, we're going to say it's 18. Either way, we're categorizing them as children not being able to make a life-changing decision that will affect the rest of their lives because their parents say it's okay. And that is gets into a very sticky situation.
Yeah. Now, they interview Nicole McAfee, who I know well and who I like very much personally. I like her very much personally. We could not disagree more politically, but we respect each other and have good discussions. She's in this article, as she should be. That's great. She represents this LGBTQ constituency. There was no balance whatsoever
in the article.
Yeah. Or really, what was the motivating factor behind the bills other than Republicans are mean? That was the theme of the article. And as a guy who used to pretend to be a journalist, I find it outrageous, just the blatant advocacy taking place in these narratives. And like we said before, it's almost not the reporter's fault. They're doing what they were trained to do in college.
Well, and she does quote David Bullard here, the Senator Bullard, who actually
in what context?
Yes.
Did she interview him for this story?
No.
Where'd she get the quote from?
Right, she got it from just what the bill's author, just his statement on the bill.
Yeah.
And
Why
so
didn't she interview him?
Yeah. Why didn't she let him?
Why didn't she give him a chance to respond to these allegations?
Well, and he says in here in his statement that she quoted that he chose the age 25, which is actually older, obviously. Than 21.
That's right. Okay. So the input from Bullard was over whether the age would be contested.
Right.
Nothing about his motives.
Right.
For the substance and spirit of the legislation.
Well, and the attack of the article is that Republicans are attacking transgender people by saying that kids shouldn't be subject to this option by just saying that their parents can do it, or even the fact that at 21 your brain isn't fully developed and you may not be able to make that decision.
I'm 52 and my brain isn't fully developed.
Amen.
But again, that's why it's important. Let's decide what an adult is. If it should be 26, let's make it 26. But let's make it universal across the board. Be that as it may, I'm glad to see legislation like this coming out of the woodwork. A lot of it knowing full well it's not going to go anywhere probably, or it's redundant. But what it communicates, I think, to the people of Oklahoma is that this encroachment by radical left ideology, we are aware of it now, which we weren't just a couple of years ago. We're now aware of it, and we're fighting back like hell.
Yeah. Well, progressivism progresses. That's a big issue here. Is that this started with an underlying theme that I think most people agree with, which is that people should be able to make choices.
Can I stop you there? I hate that they hijack that word progressive. To me, progressive has always been a positive word. Progress.
Right.
That's
but what are you
good.
progressing to? That's the question. And if you're constantly saying that, okay, in order to be a good person, you accept that all people should be able to get married if they choose to because they're adults. Okay. I think most of us agree with that statement, right? And that is put in law through the Supreme Court, all of that. But now it's being, you have these advocacy groups that lost that issue way back in 2011, right? And then they had no reason to exist. And so what do? They go search for things, and they go search for issues that can progress their really what is a monetary incentive.
Right, we were just talking about this before the show.
To keep their advocacy groups alive. And that's where I think we have a huge problem, is that now it's starting to encroach on what it is a child is, number one, and whether or not
what a woman is,
or whether or not doctors, and here's the main issue I have with this, doctors being able to make medical decisions about removing a healthy part of a person's body when they're under the age of 18. You know what I mean? And I think we've talked about this on the show before. You wouldn't have if somebody came in and said, I see myself as a one-armed person, right? Right. That I need to have you remove my perfectly functional arm because that's how I see myself.
Right. And any doctor who would do that should lose his license.
Exactly. And that's where I think that we get into a really sticky situation where these advocacy groups, one of them quoted here, or at least a spokesperson for them, try to make it you're not a good person unless you say that they can do this.
Oh, of course.
And that is a systemic manipulation that's seeped its way into education, its way into mental health.
It's a call and response.
Yes.
Yes. And if they don't get the response, you're in deep doo-doo, right?
You are.
I have like 15 just excellent points to make. So I don't even know which one to tell you about first. But talking about the intervention of the legislature, no matter what you think of the legislature or, the elements therein or whatever, or even what you think about Kevin Stitt or Walters and, maybe you don't like them, whatever. It's really hard to debate them, to disagree on their policy stances.
Right.
And they're delivering on what we want. And believe me, I'm not in the habit of praising elected officials, but I'll give credit where credit is due here. And it's great that people like Senator Jett stepping up with this Stop Woke Act, which is based on basically the Heritage Foundation model.
I will say this about that. I agree. I think the Stop Woke Act, I think that needs to be put through. I haven't read everything that Senator Jett has put out yet, and I will. But the one thing I will caution him on, or anybody else, is just to watch the amount of social emotional learning that's involved in that bill. I know that Florida's had some of that problem, where it's you just have if you haven't read about social emotional learning and how that can be used to actually inject a lot of these ideologies into the classroom.
Well, yeah,
it's
so it's
language
rebranded CRT. That's
right.
all SEL is
Well,
rebranded critical race theory.
What SEL actually is, and it's rebranded, but it's a mechanism to force people to say, if you don't agree with my stance politically, then you are a bad person,
Right?
And you need to check yourself. And checking yourself means remaining silent, and that's how you adapt yourself to the environment around you, so you have enough empathy, basically, to let all the political forces being injected into the schoolhouse have its day and run the system.
Right.
And
people think in words.
Yep.
And your thoughts are only as rich as your language.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can control someone's language, you can control their thoughts.
Yep.
And not to be some wacky conspiracy guy, I used to think saying stuff like this sounded insane until I started doing the research. I was like, oh my God, this is true.
Mm-hmm.
How nefarious this ultimate agenda is. I think if you look at this transgender, this on the kids and getting the sex changes as they're minors, and this, undermining of the parent-child relationship, you don't have to be a political scientist to look down the road and see what the end game is here.
Yeah.
And that is the sexualization of children.
Right.
That's the end game.
Right.
Make no mistake about it.
Well, and that goes back to communist ideology over the course of history, where it was an attempt to make the state the parent.
Oh.
And those who've watched me know I have been a critic of issues like school choice, but it makes sense to want that kind of thing, to say we're going to remove now that apparatus, the ability for the state to be able to try to parent the child in the place of the parent. That makes
Which is a noble
sense.
effort.
Yes, it is.
But the road to hell is paved with good
Yes, it
intentions.
is.
You don't want to do something so impulsively that you create more problems than you solve.
Right.
But to go back to your previous point about the targeting of children,
Mm-hmm.
is just look at history. In Stalin's Russia, in Hitler's Germany, when they came to power, what was the first order of business?
Education.
Breaking
Yep.
the child-parent bond.
Right. Well, and even if you look at Maoism and the Cultural Revolution,
Same.
it was an
Same.
effort to instill ideologies within the education system and remove them from the olds, which was the old generations, the old thoughts, the old ideologies, and then weaponize that generation against the older people. And that's what we're seeing now when you talk about teachers leading activists, protests for support of whether it's pro-abortion or pro-transgenderism or pro whatever you want to be pro for. And along those veins, you have teachers and administrators in schools leading children during the day, during school hours, walking out of class in support of these political causes, when 10 or 15 years ago you would have never seen them.
No, they're political advocates posing as teachers.
Exactly.
It's like you have political advocates posing as journalists.
Right.
Again, I don't know how much blame to put on the teacher.
Well,
They're doing exactly what they were trained to do in our universities.
And that's why if I'm going to give applause to Governor Stitt and to Ryan Walters of trying to revamp the accreditation system for teachers, and making it easier for people who may not have spent their lives in education but are qualified to teach subjects, the ability to come in and teach those subjects in schools.
Okay. Now I have to bow. Education's not my area of expertise, so I'm just going to let you talk and all.
No, I think they've done a good job of trying to remediate some of those situations, because what we have here is at the university level, teachers are being trained to inject this ideology into schools, whether it's in every aspect of their teaching, not just through curriculum, not just through specific lessons, but if they read To Kill a Mockingbird, they're trained to review that through a lens of activism.
Right.
And so how do you remedy that? You get people in the classroom that didn't undergo that kind of ideological transformation in order to get their degree, in order to be able to do what they're doing and see that as a virtue. So I believe that was a bill passed. I can't quote it off the top of my head. Bad journalist or bad podcaster, but
or both.
Yeah, right. That enables teachers, that enable people like a military service person who spent 25 years, doing engineering, right, in the Army Corps of Engineers. They can go and get accreditation without having to go through education school and teach in schools.
That was one of the main bills I advocated for
Yes.
in 2019 when I was working on criminal justice
Yes.
reform. Was the absolute disaster that is our professional licensing system in Oklahoma. Whole nother topic, which I could talk about for hours.
Yeah.
You don't want me to, but that's and I don't know education, but it sounds like a good idea to me.
Well, getting more people in that don't think the same, because that's what the university system is doing right now to our kids. Is it's putting them through a pipeline, to make them all think exactly the same. And when you want to talk about DEI offices that mandate that, and mandate those belief systems in order to remain a good citizen, then you're going to end up with teachers and administrators who they believe they're doing the right thing because that's what they've been taught to do.
Yeah. And now, speaking of college, I'll just give a shout out that my oldest son graduated from college.
Oh, congratulations!
This week, and what I'm most proud. He worked super hard. It was a long road. He did it. We couldn't be more proud of him. But a big part that we're proud of is that he is leaving with an absolute contempt for higher ed.
Good. Trust me, I understand that. That's good, though. I think there's more of those than are allowed to speak out at the time. I think there are more individuals like that than will speak out when they're actually in the system, because you can be penalized when you're in the system, right?
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Well, and once you get out of it, we need people like your son who have a contempt for that kind of.
He has contempt for lots of things.
Well, that's okay. That's all right.
Me mainly.
Well, that's okay.
No, but
that's definitely
I mean,
okay.
I'll tell you, that's a good point. And again, for the hundreds of thousands of people watching this podcast right now,
Definitely.
the important call to action is you have to get engaged on the smaller level. School boards, city councils. It's exciting to be at the Capitol during session. It's a big things happen there, and that's I make a chunk of my living by working there. But shame on us as conservatives for not paying attention to where the left was just targeting us into oblivion. These school boards and city councils, and we had no idea how much power they wielded until it became a crisis.
Yep.
So.
And I think we've seen a lot more engagement there over the last couple of years.
Oh, without question. Last night, this group, the Lion's Den, that meets up in Edmond once a month, and it is just grassroots conservatives. Candidates come and speak. They organize, door knocking and just, ground game campaign stuff. And they are a huge force to be reckoned with. When last night there must have been 150 people there, just in Edmond. Standing on the sidelines is over. Normal people are now pissed. Normal people who used to have the luxury of ignoring politics, are angry, and they're getting into the game. And thank God they are.
And that's what I would say to the conservatives who have issues with maybe the school choice issue, and I'm not going to get into that, but is that if you have an issue there, then you need to make sure you retake your school boards. You need to make sure you retake your city councils and put people and support people like I forgot his Gary Barksdale in Norman, Oklahoma, who I'm going to give a shout out to, who's running for Norman School Board. Right? He's a conservative, and he's.
I saw him speak last night.
Yes,
he has a
there.
ponytail.
Yes, he does.
Yes,
and
he was great. He was a firebrand.
Oh, he's great. And
what's his name again?
Gary Barksdale.
He handed out what I thought something was so compelling, and it was a statute that passed in 2002 called the Parents' Bill of Rights.
Yes, we found that out in my fair group a couple of years ago. We had a gentleman that came and showed that to us.
I had never seen that before, but he was handing. I wish I had it with me. It was like on a pink sheet of paper. And it was a compare and contrast. It was so well done.
Yeah.
I usually, you get a ton of handouts at those things, and usually I'll look at them and I will read them, but usually I leave them or throw them away. That one I held on.
Yes. Well,
that was really interesting.
That's the part about it, is there's so much in the law already that
Why
protect
didn't I bring
parents.
that in?
Because you're
Where did
a
I
slacker.
think I was coming today?
You're a slacker. We all know that. You don't actually do it. You
You're a
just show
slacker,
up and
McFly.
look good on camera, right? But no, people like Gary and others running for school board, so conservatives need to keep. Just because we have Ryan Walters in office, just because Governor Stitt is at the helm doesn't mean they have almost no control over your local government. And so that's where we need to really
I'm
put our
glad
focus.
you brought that up. Let's be perfectly clear about what the main job of the school superintendent is. It is administrative.
Yeah.
It's an administrative job,
Mm-hmm.
which I hope Walters is well suited for. And you want someone with the proper ideology administering policy, right? But the real decisions are made at the local level. So on that note, for the first time in history, which was long overdue, is Governor Stitt called for a performance audit of the Oklahoma State Department of Education. Okay. Can I just explain
Go ahead
quickly
please.
the difference between the two types of audits? And the reason I know this is because I've known Cindy Bird for a long time, and she explained it to me very well. And so
No, go ahead.
I'm basically repeating what she said. Okay. So this is a financial audit, which every state agency goes through every 2 years or, whatever. Let's say you bought $1 million worth of computers. You're the head of a state agency and you bought $1 million worth of computer. In a financial audit, which is done routinely every couple of years, an auditor would come in and say, okay, you spent $1 million on computers. Show me the computers. There they are. Okay, good. Show me the invoice from Dell or whoever you bought the computers from. Yep. Okay. Show me the return check showing that you paid it. Good. Check, check, check. Done.
Right.
That is a financial audit. And when you hear any state agency, board, commission saying, we get audited every year, every 2 years, and they're being deceptive. Because they're talking about simply a ledger balancing out to zero. What makes a difference are performance audits. And so let's take the same scenario. You're the head of an agency. You've spent $1 million on computers. I come in. Do you have the computers? Yep, there they are. Did you pay $1 million for them? Yes. These computers should have cost $500,000. Why did you pay $1 million? That's a performance audit.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the difference. I would love to say, and I'm not advocating on behalf of, or certainly not speaking on behalf of Auditor Bird in any way at this moment, but I would love to see the legislature demand performance audits of every single state agency every 10 years and properly fund the auditor's office to get it done.
I would advocate for every 5 years because I think there's so much that can go on in 10 years. So I think
no, I said 2 years.
Oh, 2 years. Oh, they said 10 years.
No,
every 2 years.
No. And
No.
I'll tell you that this is something else that Auditor Bird said was, in most of the audits, she said it's super rare to find actual criminal activity. Usually it's mismanagement, some money's being placed in the wrong accounts, and they just issue kind of, corrective actions, work on this, work on this, work on this. And there's, it's honest bookkeeping mistake kind of stuff. The genuine theft is rare. However, we don't know how much theft is taking place within state agencies.
Yeah.
Because there is no oversight on how the agencies are spending the money. So back to the audit of SDE, which is supposed to come out sometime in the future. It's a massive audit, right? That is not going to be as revealing as I think people expect it to be. Because, like I said, SDE is really administrative. Their actual budget is relatively small. They get the money and they disperse it out to the 500 plus school districts in Oklahoma. If you really want to see how the money is being spent, you would need 500 audits.
Yeah.
Of 500. Now, we can debate all day whether that's too many school districts, but I certainly think you could mandate regular audits of the 20 biggest districts.
Sure.
Or, or 50 or, whatever's manageable.
Or you do it in sectors.
Yeah, exactly. And that's not my field of expertise. Not that I really have a field of expertise, but I'm convinced that no one's ever going to fix the budget problem in Oklahoma. And I know I say this a lot, but repetition's good, I think. Is that Oklahoma is not a poor state.
No.
Oklahoma is a poorly managed state because there's no oversight of the spending. Anyway, I've really gone off my own 20 little tangents. But let me throw it back to you, Mark, in saying that, that audit of the State Department of Education might not be as kapow as people are hoping.
Yeah. Well,
Because that's really not where the rubber meets the road on the spending.
right.
Does that make sense?
Yes. No, I agree with that.
So
but-
tell your friends to manage their expectations, would you?
Well, I think that's always a good piece of advice is to manage your expectations because
Especially in state.
yeah, where you can muck it up, they will at certain points. But I think the main issue here is that people continuing to be involved in their local government, their school boards, who their school boards are hiring in terms of their or their superintendents, is a huge issue, and that's where a lot of the local attention must be pushed, regardless of any school choice bill, regardless of any situation. Like
And tell me if this is right, because you know much more about this than I do. It's my understanding that in Norman and Edmond and a lot of these school districts, that the elected board members are basically abdicating their authority and power over to the
Absolutely.
unelected superintendent.
Yes, absolutely. No, that's exactly the case, and that gives them both plausible deniability.
That's shameful.
It is.
Absolutely shameful.
It is, and there's also other incentives that go there, whether you're talking about business incentives for building projects and things like that. But the issue comes down to, is your school board promoting an education system and establishing an education system that is the best for your child and their education moving forward in their life. And if you see that they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on DEI initiatives or activist initiatives, then you need to make sure,
like the mayor in the city of Edmond is doing.
Exactly, yes, and where you're spending all this money on committees designed to instill a political ideology, you need to go to them
And foment division
Right.
among your citizens.
Right, you need to go to them and say, well, what about our test scores? What about our reading, writing, and arithmetic? What about preparing kids for the future and being able to hold a job and
Your
balance the checkbook
priorities.
and all of those kinds
Your
of things.
priorities are so out of whack.
They really are. They really are, and I've been told that so often. So, and that's what it gets down to is the parent involvement is good. What I don't want to see is now that we have advocates in higher office, right, especially at the State Department of Education. I don't want to see any of the fervor that's been gathered diminish. It actually needs to increase at this point.
Well, I haven't been on the state superintendent's website since Walters was sworn in, but we were doing story after story how just peppered that was with SEL, the social emotional learning, and the links led directly to critical race theory stuff. Has he done an overhaul of that? Has he just pulled the plug?
I haven't dug in on it completely, but I've seen some things where he's already started that. And a good part about this, and this wasn't on our slate of things to talk about.
I'm here to ask you questions you don't know the answer to.
No. I think, first of all, I
didn't mean to put you in a bad spot.
No. He's social media minded, which is a good thing in that respect. So I think he's probably on top of what is being put out by the website. That would make sense. But what he has done is he's named some very good candidates to the state school board. Whether that's Kendra Wesson or Suzanne Reynolds,
that's right.
Yes.
I was so surprised. I was happy. It was a happy surprise to see her name on there.
And Kendra's a good friend of mine and ran for seat 46, which is Jacob Rosenkranz's seat, and sadly lost that. But I think
I've worked on a campaign for that seat too.
That's a hard seat to win. Norman is just a little bit more blue than the rest of the state. But I think they're eating their hat a little bit because Kendra is...
There are other places catching up to Norman.
Yeah.
And actually, Norman made a huge step forward. In fact, the new mayor, what's his name?
Larry Heichel.
He came and spoke at Lions.
He's great. And I worked for Larry or as much as I could.
Sharp, funny.
Very good guy. But I think they're eating their hat a little bit because now she's on the state school board. And the one critique that went after her and some of the others was, well, they have no education experience. Kendra has 8 kids. Tell me she has no education experience.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, so having that kind of voice, who's both been involved in education proper, but also education from the parent perspective over that many number of years, is an invaluable asset. And so I think Ryan taking the heat that he's taken for naming those people is showing his true colors and saying, look, I want parents who have experience in education advising the state board of education on what needs to happen in our public schools.
Well, it's so funny that you mentioned that the negative reaction to her appointment was that she doesn't have a background in education.
Yeah.
My reaction is, thank God.
Yes.
Thank God.
Yes.
Because education institution, you've blown it.
Yep.
Now, should the state medical board have doctors? Yeah.
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 Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah. It's a little bit different.
Because doctors can show a track record of success over time.
Mm-hmm.
More people live after having heart attacks. More people live longer with cancer. Life expectancy is suspended. The medical community has justified itself.
Mm-hmm.
The educational community has.
It absolutely
not.
hasn't.
In
And
fact,
here's the
it has
thing:
done the antithesis of that.
every single person in the state goes through the education system. Every single, in one capacity or the other. I mean, you may have homeschoolers, but that represents a small portion of the state. A majority of every person in the state goes through the educational system in this state, and having parents who have experience raising kids, but also experience working in other capacities of education and advocating for education, having them on the state board, I think, is something that Joy was very much lacking, and I think you saw that in her policies. And I think all of that is to say, I think Ryan's making good moves with the people he's naming to the state board, because they can give him perspectives that were not available to the last administration in that area. So,
Yeah, which is a good,
Well,
Should be interesting to see how that goes down.
let's move on to something a little more fun, a little more tinfoil hat.
That wasn't fun?
Oh, well, yeah.
Okay. What time is it? Oh, it's 4:17. Okay.
You brought up this story. New York leaders calling Madison Square Garden to stop using facial recognition tech sets a dangerous precedent. So this is coming out of foxnews.com, and tell us this story here, because you brought it up. What happened here?
Okay, I think I have the details more or less correct.
Yeah.
Don't quote me, but this is
I can check them as you
This
go.
is more or less what happened. An attorney in New York City went to an event at either Madison Square Garden or Radio City Music Hall. The company owns both of them. She had a ticket, went to a show, was stopped as soon as she walked in. Security came up to her and said, "We know you. You're Jane Smith with, the Weintraub, Goldstein, and Dewey, Fleeson and Howe law firm, and get the hell out of here. You're not welcome here." Then a couple months later, it happened again. And it ends up, and then it happened again with these lawyers. And all these people were lawyers who were representing plaintiffs in lawsuits against Madison Square Garden. They were able to identify them through facial recognition software, which means Madison Square Garden, which I have no idea what kind of public-private partnership, is it like I keep it with Ford Center, Paycom Center,
Yeah,
Chesapeake,
Lord.
I keep forgetting, Paycom Center. I don't know if it's a private-public partnership like that, but it begs the question, if you're in a public space, two things. Number one, should you be excluded basically because of your profession? And number two, is it okay to intimidate and target using this super high-tech software, facial recognition? And obviously it works, because they said they ID'd them within seconds of walking in. They knew their name, they knew the law firms they worked for, and they got spirited out. Okay. So now here's a question. Let's say, just for the sake of argument, that Madison Square Garden is a completely private entity, okay? Now, what's your gut reaction to the fact that Madison Square Garden management, and individuals, some human beings, decided to do this?
My gut reaction is it's incredibly dystopian. I mean, it smacks in with the kind of civil rights notion that you should be able to attend a public event, even if it's privately owned. That I'm assuming that these events, whether it's a basketball game or it's a something at Radio City Music Hall, these are not political events. These are not some kind of partisan issue.
She was going to see like the Rockettes.
Right, she's going to see the Rockettes, and these companies have now weaponized a technology that did not exist when we're creating these statutes to protect people when it comes to public accommodations, or it comes to the ability just to participate in society. My first reaction is going, what is the government going to be able to do about this, if anything? Because then you run into the other end. Well, they're private companies.
See, that to me,
They're private companies.
that's where the interesting discussion is.
Mm-hmm.
What, if any, is the role of government here?
Mm-hmm.
I will say this, and I'd love to repeat this a lot to any conservative I meet. Let's say the government does get involved, and the federal government starts making Madison Square Garden's life a living hell.
Mm-hmm.
Not, they probably should, but they deserve due process,
Sure.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And the federal government, we know, often makes the process the punishment.
Mm-hmm.
What is the role of government here? Oh, back to my point. What I tell conservatives and private business owners is, if you don't want government interfering in your business, don't give government a reason to.
Absolutely.
Don't dump poison chemicals in the river.
Right.
Pay your employees fairly with a living wage.
Mm-hmm.
Don't make a product that could harm people.
Right.
If you follow some just very simple tenets of Judeo-Christian values,
Bad words.
the government has no reason to bother you.
Well, and we have to remember that.
These laws don't fall out of the sky.
Right. No, they don't. But this is supposed to be a government of the people, by the people, and for the people.
Mm-hmm.
This is a person in the United States.
Right.
She is the people, and to go in and use a technology that really has just come online in the past 5 or 10 years to exclude them from events that don't have anything to do with her daily job, right?
She's not a public safety threat.
Right. She's not a terrorist, right? She just works for a law. Well, you can call lawyers terrorists if you want. But she's
Public safety.
right. She's somebody trying to experience what the culture in the
She's
society.
a lady out to see the
Exactly.
the freaking the girls.
And
who
it seems
pick.
to me they are begging for the government to step in. And at that point, I think that you have to advocate for that a little bit, where your elected officials put an inquiry into this situation and say, is this technology being used to discriminate against people unfairly? And
of course. I just, it's so easy to blast the government.
yes,
But there is an absolute personal responsibility.
absolutely.
Just like, of course, people get falsely accused all the time. The criminal justice system is not perfect. But by and large, I would say 99.99999% of the time, if you don't murder someone, you're not going to be put on trial for murder.
Right.
Right?
Right.
The government's going to leave you alone.
Mhm.
Police will leave you alone until you give them a reason not to.
Right.
The EPA, that everybody despises. The EPA didn't fall out of the sky.
Nope.
The EPA was formed because companies were dumping poison into rivers. Kids were getting cancer at alarming rates. Animals were dying. God calls us that we have dominion and stewardship over the earth. And why has government grown in that regard? Because greedy capitalists did the wrong thing.
Yes, but I will say this: what has been lacking on that end is the people who is an oversight mechanism of those entities, and I think that's what we're seeing now in the new Congress, whether it's through the House and McCarthy, and a commitment to kind of a church. Look at the intelligence community, right? They're going to create a church-style committee like they had back in the 70s to look into the oversteps that have been made by the CIA or the FBI or these other entities within the government that have largely gone unchecked for the past 40 or 50 years. And so that...
Okay, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying that is something we've been missing as well, is that skepticism of government is okay, but it needs to be done with reason and nuance. And part of that is having a formal skepticism of saying, okay, are our legislators going to go in and look at the entities that are holding big business accountable, as well as just letting them just run roughshod over everyone?
Right. And what is the ultimate problem with the EPA is that they overstep their authority.
Exactly.
They abuse individual
The
rights,
IRS.
property rights. The IRS is a great example. Again, the IRS is different in the way it was formed.
Yes.
That's actually an interesting story if you want to talk about the formation of the
Yeah.
IRS. But my point is, conservatives owe it to themselves and the rest of the world to have a little introspective thought.
Yes.
What was my role in creating this.
Yeah. Well, and thinking that corporations are going to save you just because they're not the government is a fallacy. I mean, because if you give them unfettered access and they're going to do what people do, which is take too much, in the anticipation that government's going to come and regulate them out of the space. You know, so we must understand as conservatives that corporations, to quote Mitt Romney, are the people who run them.
That's true, but
they aren't people.
But it's not a chicken and egg situation.
No, it's not. It's not. No, they feed off of each other. They absolutely do. And so we have to.
Yeah, but one came first, and that was capitalists who were too greedy.
Well, yes. In some respects. I mean, the government was there before, but the fact that the government was weaponized, for lack of a better word, to regulate them, you know, whether you're talking about the progressive era and Teddy Roosevelt and all of that kind of situation,
started much earlier than
it did start earlier, but I'm talking about the government's response to it, whether it's with the railroads or the trust busting and things like that. That has gone too far in many aspects, but we can't allow the overcorrection. We can't allow the overcorrection that all corporations must be free, you know, to do whatever they want simply because they're private entities. The government can't step in on behalf of the people and regulate them.
That's you have to be practical, and that is that, you know, a system of government, state or federal, with virtually no oversight over private industry, was practical in 1822.
Yeah. It's not
23.
Yeah.
It's not in 2023.
Yeah.
And we've seen why.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the depression, that didn't happen by accident.
No, it didn't.
So anyway, we're kind of digressing and getting a little philosophical. And
That's
I don't
okay.
even remember what the original conversation was. But
we're talking about facial recognition.
Right. Yeah, the facial. Okay, so what is the role of government here?
I think the role of government is to ensure personal liberty. So when you're talking about this situation, you're talking about the liberty of the person, and this can get hairy. You know, whether you're talking about cakes being made by people over ideological there's so many sides of the spectrum. But this person's right to walk into a public space and enjoy something that's non-political and non-partisan and be excluded using a technology that oversteps the bounds, I believe, of what anybody conceived during the founding of this country. That you'd be able to police people just by the way that they look, using a system that can pick you out of a crowd of 1 million.
Okay, so
is very dangerous, and that's the kind of thing you see in China.
Okay, but
to police the people beyond what they're meant to be policed.
Let me ask you a question. Morally, what is the difference between a security guard having a printout of this woman's mugshot, seeing her walk in and going, oh, that's that lawyer from the law firm, and kicking her out? Is there a moral difference between that and using the facial recognition technology?
Absolutely. I think there's a moral difference because we're talking about humanity here. We're talking about the ability of people to move without being accosted, the freedom of association, even.
Right, but the outcome was the same in both my scenarios. She was kicked out in both scenarios.
Well, but the outcome may be the same in both your scenarios if they're caught by the person who's just looking through a crowd of 1 million.
What's the difference?
You know, the difference is that you're using a technology that's designed to penetrate what is normal for a human being to be able to take in. And I think that enables corporations and the state, whether you're talking about the CIA or you're talking about Google, right, to be able to police society in a way that the Constitution never meant for it to happen.
So I think what you're saying is, if I understand you correctly, using that facial recognition technology in the way that Madison Square Garden is allegedly using it,
it's a weapon of mass surveillance.
No one should have that much power.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
No one should have that much power.
When you put that into the hands of an entity, whether it be government or private, and you do that unregulated, or you do that with the ability, because they're just like you said, that it's only a certain amount of time before they say, well, this person voted for Trump, they're not allowed here.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
And we were talking about that off air, but yeah, I mean, again, look down the road. You see where this is going.
And that's what we have to look for.
Yes. That was a pretty ugly social media. But actually, it wouldn't be a person looking at it. It'll be an algorithm. And you'll be flagged on God knows what criteria. That's terrifying.
To me, and I know that I'll get in trouble for this. I know because the OKGOP got in trouble for this, but it's tantamount to wearing a star. It's tantamount to wearing something on your body that sets you apart from the regular, the good people. And without knowing, and I don't want to use the direct analogy, but when you put something on your person or subject a person to that, to say we're going to remove you from society, whether it's a vax card, for example, right? Because you didn't do what it was that polite society said you should do.
Right.
That becomes a problem.
Without due process.
Without due process. Right. No, yes. And if you've been convicted of a crime and you have a mandate to stay away from certain areas because of your past conduct.
Right. Or if you're confined to prison.
Right. Yes. No, that makes sense. But when we're talking about a lawful individual who's not committed a crime being excluded from a public place where hundreds of thousands of people go every single day and week, that is beyond the scope. And I think that's where you have government, a need for government to come in and say, corporations cannot use this type of technology to exclude or discriminate against people who've not committed a crime. And there should be something said for that. Now, that process also needs to be checked. So
okay. Then
this is a complex system.
Let me push back a little.
Okay.
Let's say I walked into Madison Square Garden for a Knicks game in full KKK regalia. I'm not breaking any laws. Can they kick me out?
They could, but what would the old ACLU say about that? You see what I mean?
Because I lived in Skokie.
Yeah, and that's why I brought it up.
You're talking about the 77.
Yeah, I'm talking about the old ACLU. What would they would take up that case and they would defend them in court.
Well, just so people listening understand, in 1977,
he's a white supremacist. No.
in 1977, the Ku Klux Klan wanted to hold a march and rally in Skokie, Illinois, which is a predominantly Jewish neighborhood.
Yes.
And we actually lived in Lincolnwood, which is just adjacent to Skokie, but we were like the token Gentiles in our neighborhood. My mom used to go to the school and teach kids about Christmas. And I've been to more bar mitzvahs and confirmations. But okay, the point being, this is a predominantly Jewish neighborhood with a lot of Holocaust survivors, by the way. The guy who used to cut my hair when I was a little kid, I remember he had the tattoos on his arm. Anywho, so the Klan wants to have this rally. The city of Skokie said, no way. The ACLU took up the case and said, as disgusting and repulsive, and as much as we are repulsed by the Ku Klux Klan, their message and their ideology, the value that we all hold dear of free speech is more important.
Right.
And so the ACLU, representing the Ku Klux Klan, won. And the Klan got to have that rally. It was peaceful. Nothing happened. And they
moved on. It was actually the uproar against it that caused it more limelight on it than it would have happened in the first place. But the point is that even if I despise your message and your political message, which I absolutely do despise the message of the Ku Klux Klan, right?
Of course.
It's hateful. Them having the ability to say what they want to say in a public forum, as long as it's lawful and nonviolent and within the bounds of the law, ensures that I and you are able to say what we would like to say in the same capacity.
Yeah, and we will destroy you in the marketplace of ideas.
Yes, exactly.
But we're not going to kick you out of the marketplace.
Exactly, and I think that's what this facial recognition...
Unless you get violent. If you get violent, if there's a call to violence...
No, then you need to be...
Yeah.
The law enforcement capacities need to be able to address that accordingly.
Sure.
But if you're peaceful and you want to have your message, then you have your message. But that's where I think this ties back into the facial recognition system. And in this specific issue is that they targeted her because of work she did in her private life with a firm
in
that
her
was
professional
adversarial
capacity as an attorney.
That may have been adversarial, that had nothing to do with the event that she was going to.
Which the plaintiff, right or wrong, has the right to sue Madison Square Garden.
Yes.
I mean, that is a constitutionally guaranteed redress of grievance in a civil court.
And they have their right to association, the freedom of association with that group without being penalized for it.
And so basically, I think clearly what Madison Square Garden management is trying to do is intimidate people.
Yes. But they were trying to do it under the radar. That's the thing. They didn't expect this to become public. That's the other part about
that's foolishness on their part.
Yes.
But it just, I mean, it's such a catch-66 because the last thing I want to do is call for the government to come in.
Right.
But good God, there's something wrong here. It's a problem that I don't have the slightest idea what the solution is.
That brings us back to the notion that government should be of the people, by the people, and for the people. And that's where we need, I hope that Speaker McCarthy is going to hold to his promises on some of the things that he's promised in the new House, of trying to bring some of that back to our institutions that's been eroded over the past 50 years, where you have senators and Congress people who are more beholden to who's going to put money in their pockets for the next campaign than they are for the interests of their constituents. And when we're talking about interests of the constituents, it needs to go towards not just the majority of the people who are donating to them or who support the rallies, but to the freedoms inherent in the Constitution, provided by the American Constitution, for people they may not agree with. Yeah. And I don't know who represents her, but whoever her congressman is should be shouting from the rooftops, Democrat or Republican, that this is wrong, and that this person should not be targeted because they work for a law firm that's sued.
This is such a no-brainer for any Democrat to jump on.
Oh, yeah. It used to be. It's not so much anymore.
This issue's a winner for Democrats.
It's a winner for anybody.
No, because
for populist Republicans, it's a winner.
Yes, which means they could win over Democrats. But Republicans are put in this conundrum where is the line between the privacy rights of a property owner and the role of the government? Just like, but I mean, the fact is you can't discriminate based on race. You can't, stop a Chinese guy from coming into.
And this gets us into the whole topic of the DEI notion in general, because the thought is that they're going to put in an ideology that cleanses an institution to think that the only way you can be a part of polite society is to associate with the right politics. And this is tangential but it runs parallel to this issue of she was suing, her firm was suing this company based upon a grievance that she has the right to due process. But the company dictated that her association with that process made it to where it was okay for them to exclude her from public events. And that is where it starts to bleed into the DEI issue, because that's all DEI is designed to do.
Can I back up just for a second, though? We talk about, but again, this isn't the government doing this. It's a private entity doing this. But it's so appalling, and I think on one of the levels it just occurred to me it's appalling on, is that really the underpinning of much of the Bill of Rights is the philosophy that we have the right to be left alone.
Yep.
That's really the underpinning of the Bill of Rights. We have the right to be left alone. And this is a clear violation. Now,
do you abandon that right when you walk through the doors?
Do you abandon that right when you walk through the door? And what's the difference between having pictures of this woman printed everywhere, analog versus digital?
I'll say this. I think that Republicans often conflate the freedom of companies with the right to individual freedom. Is that companies as an entity are a conglomeration of people with an interest beyond the individuals within the company, right? And so saying that companies have the same exact individual rights as the individual themselves, I think is a problem for Republicans.
Well, and that was the underpinning of the Citizens United decision.
Right.
That allows these PACs to just go hog
exactly.
wild. Now, if you look at the citizens...
We're getting off. I know, that's okay.
I'll just... a long time ago, back when I worked in news, we would get bored a lot in the newsroom, especially on World Series nights, because we had like 4 hours and we didn't start till the game. So anyway, we were just like sitting around. So we would often start insulting each other. And so we decided that we were going to give each other superhero names, like based on your most annoying or unlikable characteristic. And the one they came up with me, oh, and by the way, nobody was man. There was no Superman. It was always boy.
Right.
Mine was Tangent Lad. that was my superhero identity, was Tangent Lad.
Yeah.
So I apologize.
No, I think this is okay.
So here's the tangent I was going to go on, or at least one of them, is getting back to this idea of just kind of, and it all ties in. Give me a minute. Where we're talking about the ACLU actually defending the Klan, not defending the Klan, defending the Klan's right to speak freely. A couple of years ago, I can't remember how many. Anyway, I'm friends with the former head of the ACLU. I'd like they're nice. I've worked with them on criminal justice reform. I don't have anything bad to say about these people. They couldn't be nicer. We just really don't agree politically. Anyway, but we work together well because we all had the same policy goals. Anywho, I asked the old director of the ACLU, would the ACLU come to the Klan's defense today like it did in Skokie? He said, no way in hell. Well, then what is the ACLU?
Right.
You know,
they're there to
your
push the
mission
political
statement
ideology.
is that you advocate for the
and
promotion and protection of the Bill of Rights. That's their mission.
And free speech specifically in many different cases.
Free speech,
right? And
also in the Bill of Rights is the Second Amendment.
yes.
Yeah. So anyway, there are a lot of things I agree with the ACLU on.
Sure. Well, the old ACLU for sure.
Even today, it's civil asset forfeiture. If you're familiar with that, it is an outrageous, egregious abortion of due process.
Right.
So I'm in 100% alignment with the ACLU that, yeah, we should get rid of that program.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, you look for ways that you can buy.
And this is why nuance, the discussions like this, however many people are watching or may watch this, I don't mind the tangents because...
Hold on, let me look. It's
400,000, I think.
1.2 M? Does that
million? I think, yeah. No, but I think we often talk about the intersection of identities. That's the new thing, right? Where things intersect is in policy, right? How they intersect with laws and freedoms and rights across the board, and that But
Go ahead.
that's what we have to discuss, and what I would like to see more discussion from our elected officials. And I know we've talked about bringing in candidates here and having debates and things like that.
Yeah, that's one of the shows we're developing.
Right.
At Project 46,
right.
The debate show.
Yes, and I think that would be good because you would have this kind of unfettered discussion like we're having here, where you have maybe a loose way of talking about things, but you're able to tangentially go off into how that may affect something you never thought about.
Right.
And that's why podcasts like this or like Joe Rogan or are so popular, because you sit down there for 2.5 hours and they discuss how all of the things that person has brought in to discuss relate back to each other. And that's what people are hungry for. And that's what I got into this space to do, is to have those kinds of conversations. So I'm fully up for this.
God, what a great opportunity to plug Project 46.
Exactly.
Because people should subscribe. You'll get access to exclusive content, all kinds of great stuff. It's newsok46.com. Now, of course, our website, Project 46 spelled out, that still works.
Yes.
But isn't it so much easier? newsok46.com.
It's
you go
just
there.
so beautiful.
It's great stuff. So you did you shoot any shows this week?
Not this week. No, I took a little bit of time off for the baby, but I got some things coming out. I've actually got.
I forgot how lazy you were.
Yes, I'm super lazy. No. But I'll say this: I'm delving into. If anybody doesn't know, I'm a music person, and I actually produced a song that I'm gonna put out. It's about the WEF. It's actually featuring Klaus Schwab. That's going to be coming out here soon. It's just something I did.
Really? Do you play all the instruments?
I play all the instruments.
What instruments?
Guitar, bass, drums.
Okay, so did you lay down
violin?
a drum track first?
Yeah, I just did some tracks and spent some time in my home studio doing that.
How's your beat? Do you have a metronome in your head?
Yeah, no, it comes to garage band, things like that. So yeah, it's
Okay.
just
well, no. I know a lot of talented musicians, and you have a PhD in music.
Yes,
right?
well, almost. Yeah.
You
I'm
should have
ABD. All but dissertation on that, but yes, I will soon. And
yeah.
But this is it's a rock song. It's just something I put together, and so
when's it dropping?
It here in the next couple of days.
Say.
It was actually supposed to drop yesterday.
Why don't we drop it on this show, and then
I might.
And then we can all sit around, and then we'll listen to it
and make fun of me for it. That'll be good.
You took the words right out of my mouth.
No, it's just something
sounds cool.
a little artistic outlet, and I've got some shows coming up.
So do you have like a little studio in your house?
Yeah, the same studio I do the podcast.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, so
how cool.
Yeah, it's been neat.
I have no musical ability.
No, you don't. But you know so much about music. You know way more about the Beatles than I do.
I can talk about music all day.
Yeah.
But I'm not. Well, I never. I played the cello for a year.
Hey,
that was it.
that's the
and I
the king of instruments is the cello. Well,
Oh,
if
is
you
it
take
really?
the organ out, but yes, the king of string instruments is the cello. So
You're damn right it was.
yeah,
At
it
least
was not when you were
when
playing.
I was
yeah.
playing it. No, but my wife is a performance piano major.
Oh, great.
You know,
Mhm.
she's not in college now.
Yeah.
She was. And yeah, she has just that metronome.
Yeah.
You know, that's
Well,
kind of what
I'm
I
a
call it.
conductor.
It's
so.
just her beat is perfect in her head, and mine's not.
Yeah, my only job as a conductor is to keep the beat, so I have a pretty good metronome. That's my. I always say that my instrument makes no noise and I never make a mistake, but it's always someone else's mistake. No, but so I'm dropping that, and I'll be doing some shows here coming up in the next
All
week.
right,
or two,
Maestro. We're
Yeah,
looking
and I'm
forward to
actually
that.
going to have you hopefully on the show here in the next month or so.
I keep waiting for my
You know,
invitation.
I've given you an invitation, but we won't talk about that on the air. We won't air out our dirty laundry like some other people we know that have been in the crowd.
Oh,
of
the
DW.
Ben
Oh,
Shapiro,
gosh.
Jeremy Boring, Stephen Craig. That's sad. That was,
It's
I hate to
sad.
see conservatives bicker and betray each other.
Yeah,
But
but
it's a
I will
bad
say this.
look,
The
but-
one thing I will say about that, and I'm going to dive into it, is that
And I don't know anything.
I like seeing consensus makes me nervous.
Okay.
You know, it just in general.
I can see that.
Consensus makes me nervous. And so when I see people bickering a little bit, I go, okay, you know, even if it was started with less than honorary, you know, intentions, honorable intentions, that they're going to be
But it got
ideas.
progressively uglier. That was the thing that got ugly.
Yes,
It got
yes.
ugly.
But I
nothing
like
wrong with
seeing
disagreement. It's the
seeing open
ugliness.
bickering between friends who can be friends after the fact. Now, whether or not
Oh,
they
I
can do
don't-
that after that,
I
I'm
got
not
the
sure.
impression this-
Yeah,
this
I know,
was-
but I would like to see more open debate on specific issues on the right, because
yeah,
I think
among-
there is a tendency to say, well, we're all against what the left is doing, which is obvious. I think that, you know, all of us liberty-minded, like-minded folks on who lean towards the right end of the spectrum see what's going on with the woke left and a unified front on that respect. But that sometimes lends towards, well, we're not going to openly question each other, because then it looks like, you know, they're going to be able to take advantage of that. And I don't think that that's a good precedent to set. I think that we need is vigorous of an open debate on the right between each other, whether it's, you know, on tax policy or education policy or, you know, whatever. We need those kind of open discussions
Well, yeah. I mean, one of the fundamental
without it getting personal, you know.
never personal.
Yeah.
And one of the fundamental values of debate, I think, is you never have a good handle on your issue unless you were able to argue against it.
Yes, absolutely.
Prosecute your own position.
Right.
And you see people make mistakes a lot like that when, you know,
Right.
you know, I work with a lot of political candidates and elected lawmakers and people on media and messaging and debate prep, forum prep. And one thing I hammer right from the beginning and almost every day, it's are you a boxing fan?
Yes.
Any chance?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, we need to talk
Yes,
boxing.
let's talk boxing.
Okay.
That'd be fun.
Did you ever box?
No, I don't like getting hit, but I've
Okay.
been hit, but I don't like it. So.
Well, nobody
you know,
nobody likes.
I
getting
played
hit.
hockey. If that
That's
matters.
close.
So yeah,
Okay.
I bet. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I boxed in college. It's Golden Gloves, and that was okay. But you know, you have to train for quite a while before they'll let you in the ring.
Yeah.
The first thing they tell you when you're stepping into that ring, and this is the most important lesson. The reason I love boxing is it is the perfect metaphor for life, and that's why you have so many boxing idioms. You know, he's you know, you got him on the ropes,
Right.
saved by the bell.
Right.
You know, he's in the corner.
Rope-a-dope. Yeah.
Rope-a-dope.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many idioms like that because it's so translatable to human life.
Yeah.
Anyway, my piece of advice is this, and I think all conservatives need to operate this way, and that is the punch that knocks you out is not the hard punch. It's the punch you don't see coming.
Yeah.
The punch that knocks you out is not the hard punch. It's the punch you don't see coming. And when conservatives lose debates,
Yes.
it's because they got hit with a punch they didn't see coming, and that only happens if you're not prepared.
Right. No, I agree.
So that's my lecture for the people of Oklahoma. But you know, okay, so I know we're all over the map, but I do have to get this out on record at some point, and that is that you know, there are organizations like Project 46 popping up all over the country and popping up in Oklahoma. These are conservative, you know, these are kind of like just, you know, schmoes like us who got fed up and said, let's put together some, conservative media.
Content, yeah.
Because people are demanding it. Now, again, for the 1.2 million listeners,
Yes.
The equipment to do this podcast
Costs money.
the office space, the electricity, the mics, they all cost money. And if you can't join the fight, please help fund the fight.
Yes.
And you can do that with Project 46 either by becoming a sponsor, in which you get an excellent rate of return, or become a subscriber and get an excellent rate of return. For Christ's sake,
Support the information.
subscribe.
Subscribe
to Project 46.
and watch special assignment and watch Red River TV and watch Unwokeable and
okay, go ahead.
no, what were you gonna say?
Well, I was going to plug my own show.
Well,
That's
plug
what I
your
was
own
gonna
show.
say. No, I was going to dropping very soon was an interview with Brett Farley from Conservatives Concerned with the Death Penalty, and I'm on board with that. I'm a conservative opposed to the death penalty, and there's a really growing movement about that. And Conservatives Concerned, as they call themselves, it's an initiative of the Catholic Church, but it's nationwide. This is the first chapter in Oklahoma.
Okay.
And for God's sake, what better place to set up than Oklahoma?
Why? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So that's dropping soon. And then, you know who I interviewed and finally got to really meet and talk to? Old Ranger. You know who that is?
No, I've heard.
Yeah, you see him on Facebook. It's a guy in Edmond, up there with the American flag. He came up with that Stand for America yard sign, which we bought one. They were $8, and the printer who made them said it was the biggest selling sign he had ever made. Was just this thing that said Stand for America that Old Ranger came up with. Anyway, I try to limit usually, the interviews on my little show there to 20, 30 minutes, keep it interesting. This guy was so compelling, I think we went for over an hour.
Wow.
It was so fascinating life story, fascinating present life, and inspiring, very inspiring guy. And I hope people tune in for that, because that was one of my favorite interviews.
Well, and they should support everything the Project 46 is doing.
Everything.
And Red River TV
Without
and
question.
And all of us. We're just trying to give you information you won't see in other places. So please subscribe, support, watch, share the videos. That's another thing you can do. Share the videos, like, subscribe, and share the videos.
Oh, there's me talking to Jenny White.
Oh, yes. Jenny White is amazing.
She was great. We did a two-part series on her dark money investigation. And then we had J.J. Humphrey as well. Miles, is this behind the paywall? Half of it is behind the paywall.
The very most interesting portion is behind the
part is,
paywall.
yeah.
So you need to make
So
sure
the
you
free
broach
part-
that paywall. Yes.
The free part will, that hooks you, and then we reel you in with the subscription. But it's how much is it, Miles, a month?
But it comes down to you can do $20 a month or subscribe for a full year at 10.
Oh,
There you go, $10 a month. $10 a month.
Wow.
That's nothing.
Yeah.
That's 2 cups of coffee.
One
And
cup of coffee if you
one
order
cup-
all the extras, okay? Let's just be honest about that.
You remember the movie Risky Business?
Yes.
That movie's like 40 years old. And I remember there's a line in there that I thought was hilarious at the time. Do you remember when Joel and his sidekick Miles went down to the Drake Hotel in Chicago? And his friend goes, "Oh, this is great, Joel. Where else can you pay $4 for a cup of hot chocolate?" And it's just funny now because that would be the cheapest cup of hot chocolate.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's my old man story.
Old.
But 35% off annual coupon. You get to hear witty anecdotes about 80s movies.
Yes.
And enter coupon code Oklahoma or coupon code, can I plug mine? Spino, S. P as in Patrick, E, N as in Nancy, O, Spino. And
Or
what's yours?
Unwokeable, I think.
Unwokeable.
Yes.
You do
You
want to spell
coupon
that?
code that. Yes, and that helps support us in addition to helping support Project 46 in the process. So,
I
so
got kids to feed.
yes, and I do too. And
Yes.
diapers are expensive. Holy
Insanely
moly.
expensive.
Holy crap.
Insanely expensive. So
So-
is formula.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, yes. And when you can have it, when it's actually in the stores, yes, it's expensive.
Oh, is there still a shortage?
Well, I don't know. We haven't used it, but I can.
There's an egg shortage. I noticed.
Yeah, no, eggs are so expensive. But all right, thank you, everybody. We are going to sign
that
off
it?
for the week.
Are we
and
done here?
I think we are.
Okay.
So we're going to sign off for the week. We'll be back next week, same bat time, same Project 46 channel.
We'll be back
See
here.
you later, and Take care of yourselves.
Peace out. I think.